What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Import Modify. On this episode, we'll be finishing off the RB25 engine, and also we'll be wrinkle black coating the Freddy intake manifold. And if you watched my last episode, you saw that I got everything shaved down in order to get the oil pan mounted to the block. Now, looking at pictures of CX Racing, I noticed that the cross member follows inside here pretty close. Now, I may have made that a little too deep on the valley, and I just want to make sure that I do, in fact, have enough clearance and how much I do have. Now, if I have a little bit too much, I can hit the valley back in and get the clearance as close as it can be to the pickup tube. And I figured out a way to do that. So I'm going to be sharing all this with you guys. And that way, whenever you come across doing a project like this for yourself, you'll be well equipped to handle what I'm trying to figure out. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the oil pan first and what we got going on. If you watched my last episode, I was explaining the differences between a gasket type pan and an RTV type pan. And if you see this little recess right here in between the bolt holes, that right there is to help pocket the RTV. These are in fact made for RTV to be used as the sealant to seal off the pan. The CX Racing was just flat, and I wanted to be able to use RTV in order to seal this pan. So what I did was I kind of just used the same method. I took my angle grinder with a grinding disc and I grinded in between each bolt hole, and I pretty much made the same design as the stock oil pan. And then after I grinded the little slots, I took my file and just got the jagged edges nice and clean. So now we can use RTV on this pan and won't be any issues. And I want to find out exactly how much clearance I have in this valley to the oil pickup tube itself. So, reason for that being is I was looking at pictures of this oil pan mounted into the Z32 chassis, and it seems like the cross member and power steering rack and pinion follows really close to the pan. And I would hate for that to be a clearance issue. So, the thing that I come up with is I'm going to use Play-Doh or Silly Putty, and I'm just going to put a coat, like a string of it, across the tube. Then I'm gonna go ahead and bolt it down with my fasteners just in these areas right here, enough to seal the pan to the block. And then I'm gonna unbolt it, take it off, and then that is gonna tell me exactly how much clearance I have to the tube. So if I can actually beat this down a little bit evenly and be able to have more clearance on the bottom that way, I'll go ahead and do that. But it's going to give me a general idea of exactly how much clearance there is between the tube and the pan after I've made that modification. So that's what we got going on the pan. Now, focusing on the Freddy intake, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it sitting just like this in this position. That way I can get around all the areas nice and even with the wrinkle black coat so that the texture is even across all of it. If you have any experience doing wrinkle black, if you spray heavier in some areas and lighter in other areas, the wrinkle effect will kind of appear uneven. You'll have big wrinkles on one end, small wrinkles on the other end. So I think for this, the way I have it set up right now, I think this will work good if I just put it over there in my little painting board, and I'll just place it down like this. That way I can just, you know, mask off the holes, the areas like that and everything. I should be able to get a nice even coat over the whole intake manifold and get a nice even wrinkle. But the only tricky thing that's going to be is getting these masked off. So I'm going to have to take my time and do it right. Make the masking really nice. That way whenever I paint it, it'll be a nice even coat, and this thing will be ready to be mounted up after I put in the inlet tube right here and the other little fittings, and we'll get it all onto the RB25 engine, and then we'll be good to go on that. So very close to having this thing done. I plan by the end of the episode to have everything, covers, everything all bolted on, ready to go, and the engine will be done. So then we'll be moving on to the transmission. After the transmission, we'll start focusing on the car itself. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. So this is what I came up with the masking. I took some vacuum lines, I cut them, stuffed them in the holes right here for the vacuum ports, right here as well. A little bit bigger hoses for this right here. I taped the inside ring right there with painter's tape, then I stuffed it with blue shop towel. And since I'm using top feed injectors, I'm not going to be using these O-rings anymore. So I put the O-rings in the injector ports, and then I plugged the holes off with blue shop towels. So and all the other areas you saw previously, I taped them and trimmed them off, so we're good to go on this thing. I'm gonna go ahead and set it up over there, wipe it down with some brake cleaner, make sure that the surface is indeed nice and clean. After that, we'll get ready to throw some paint. Alright, so now we got the Freddy intake manifold nice and wrinkle coated. It's looking very nice. We're going to move on to the oil pan now. And as I was stating before, I just want to see exactly how much depth we have right here as far as the clearances on this. So what I'm trying to do is bring this down as much as possible so I can get the maximum amount of clearance between the cross member and the rack and pinion. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a little string of this. I'm gonna lay it across right here. I'm gonna take that pan, we're gonna bolt it on, and then we're gonna take it back off, and then I'm gonna gauge the Play-Doh and see exactly how much clearance we have between the pickup tube and the oil pan. So that's the idea. Let's see how well it works out. So let's go ahead and start it. So it looked like the wobble on the base plate was tricking me whenever I was making the valley for the pickup tube, but looking at it right now, I got really good clearance as far as this right here is where it comes down in the lowest point. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to bring the valley back down a little bit and reseat it and remeasure exactly on this right here. So the thing that was getting me the most was right here on the back edge, right here. That's the part that was interfering the most, making me think it was up here. And I started getting more of a valley beat out right here as opposed to right here. And whenever I made enough room right there, the wobble went away. So I'm gonna bring this down some, and then we're gonna put it back on and remeasure it. So it's hard to gauge these things without having anything like this in order to know exactly how much room you have underneath there. So after I did it all, I was thinking at night, and I was like, damn, I could have did Play-Doh, but it's all good, man. I'm doing this so you guys can learn. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna even this out a little bit. We'll put it back on and see how much clearance we have. So I'm gonna call this good. This is after the last time I did it. I still got plenty of room there underneath the pickup tube, and looking at the bottom of the pan, it is pretty flush still. Now take into account that I did take quite a bit of material out from the inside. So I did make this thinner, and I did you know, shave around the little weld on the corner right here. Now the weld is double-sided, so I took quite a bit of material out right here as well, and right here was the major interference part of the oil pan. But just be careful whenever you beat it out, because you want to make sure that you don't cause any cracking on the aluminum. So I noticed that, you know, beating it in and out on the inside weld, I did have a little bit of a line crack on the inside weld. But that's okay because it's double-sided on the weld, and I should be just fine. But now we have good clearance, and it looks pretty damn good. So if I had not ground down the inside as much as I had, this would be indeed a lot higher. But the fact that I took the inside material out, I was able to beat this down relatively flush now, and we are good to go on this oil pan. So that is a good deal. I'm very happy with it, and it should work out fine, and I should have no clearance issues. But let's see if you can see this. There's the inside groove right there. So it's not really doing it any justice, but the inside groove right there grooves in pretty good. And then I have this along the top, and I wish that you guys were able to feel this, but it's pretty thin on the peak part of where the center of the pickup tube is. So other than it looking like it has more clearance on the side, the middle part is where you actually count the clearance, and this gives me just enough clearance to make it all work. So we know exactly what kind of clearances we have, and I'm gonna call this good. So you guys go ahead and use the Play-Doh whenever you're going to be taking material away from it, if you run into the same problems that I have. And that is a great way to gauge exactly how much room you have underneath there. So wish I would have thought of this beforehand, but hey, it's a learning experience. So anyway, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and prep the surfaces up and everything, and I believe I'm going to go ahead and mount this pan now. So once I get the pan mounted, we'll move on to putting the rest of the engine together. Okay, now this is what the intake manifold looks like in the end. Very nice. back side of it. So it came out beautiful. I went ahead and put the valve cover bolts, well, screws, up on this cardboard piece, and I repainted them so they look new. And now we're going to go ahead and mount the studs to the head, and here's the new studs so we can get the exhaust manifold on, and then after that we will be working on the intake manifold. Damn guys, all this prepping and painting and everything, it really is very time consuming. But we got most of the engine together now, and I still have a little bit of things left to do in order to finish it off. Like, you know, the fittings and whatnot, the head drain. I'm still waiting on the rear head drain to come in. We still got to mount up the Freddy intake manifold, but this thing is indeed looking very beautiful. And one of the things that I come across is this water outlet right here, this coolant outlet. Look how easy I can put that in with my hand. That's supposed to be a pressed fit, but it is a common thing on these intake manifolds. I was doing research on it, and a lot of people, what they do is they use just JB Weld, and then they push it in and they give it the 24 hours to cure. Now, a coolant system isn't more than 16 psi, I believe, on this application, so it isn't under very high pressure. And a lot of people have done this and did it with success in the past, so that's what I'm going to do to seal this off. We still have to put other fittings on it, like the coolant temp sensors and sending sensor, up on the neck area, the cross pipe, the idle air control valve. I still got to do quite a bit to this before I can move on, so I'm not going to be including it in this episode, but I still got other pieces and whatnot to clean, like the throttle body and everything. And just looking at this, the condition of this right here, if you can see that, I've turned the whole engine looking like this into this here. So with that being said, taking a crusty engine, tearing it down, going through it, cleaning everything up, resealing and gasketing and painting and everything, takes a very long time, but as you can see, the results are very, very rewarding. So with that being said, I believe I'm going to close off this episode, guys. I'm going to get my stuff together for the next episode. We'll be mounting the intake manifold and getting all the little odds and ends bolted onto the engine. Then from there, we'll be moving on to the transmission. And then after I get everything engine and transmission wise done, we'll move on to the Z32 car itself. So making good progress, sometimes not fast as I want it to go. Other things go really fast, but it's just mostly cleaning. I mean, look at all this. Here's your idle air control valve. No, this isn't. This is your idle air control valve. And you can see everything's really, really crusty. So it's just, it is what it is. So I got to clean more, get things prepped up more. We'll get this all figured out. I'm not too sure about the mounting hardware that they gave me for the Freddy intake. I'm going to see if the stock intake manifold bolts will work with this application. And if it does, I'm going to use the factory bolts because they're better than the ones that they supply you with. So we'll be good. And they did give me all the vacuum port connectors. So we're good on that. They gave me a bracket for the throttle cable and everything. So it's going to be a little time consuming to go through all this, get it all right, get all the hoses, everything connected back up, oil cooler and everything. We had to clean all that as well, put it all back on. The coolant thermostat housing outlet, I did bead blast it and everything, but look how corroded it is. It's from electrolysis over the years. It's just ate itself away, so I ordered another one of those. Waiting on that to come in. And coils and whatnot, they're a little corroded as well, so I'm probably going to order a new set of coils. If not, I'll clean those up and just paint the brackets so they look good again. But we still got just a little bit left to do on this engine. It's very time consuming, guys. I like to move faster, but it is what it is. That's how it is. If you want the build to look nice, you got to take your time and do it right. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Bear with me. Before you know it, we'll get things together and we'll start working on the car itself. So cool deal. Making good progress. I'm loving the way it's looking really clean and fresh. So on that, I'm going to wrap up the episode. Y'all know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.